aggressively enough. I would say probably the biggest limitation in reference to addressing climate change in Canada right now is lack of sense of appreciation of the need to act with urgency. Like, we got to move on this stuff. We have to move rapidly. I don't think that's well understood or appreciated. But when we get the information into the hands of homeowners, they act, and we need multiple distribution channels to do that. Where we are having, by the way, the maximum success is at, and moving forward on adaptation in Canada, it's at the municipal level with municipalities. When you meet with mayors and councillors, they get it. And it takes 15 minutes for them to say, I want this information in the hands of all my constituents, because what we want to do is help homeowners help themselves. That's where we can get the most risk out of the system. So, and by the way, just broadly, one other point about the federal government, I think you mentioned earlier, just so you know, from 2015 to 2024 in Canada, the federal government dedicated $160 billion to mitigating greenhouse gas emissions, either directly or through tax subsidies. Over the same period of time, the federal government directed $6.7 billion to adaptation. The ratio of the allocation of resources in the country is 24-1 mitigation to adaptation. Adaptation almost gets no funding. And I don't know what the right number is, but it's sure not 24-1. It's enormously lopsided. And the Insurance Bureau of Canada is leaning towards 50.
It's a goal for all of us.
Yeah, and everybody wins, by the way, by not having, the best way to solve the problem is don't have the problem. And everybody wins by not having the floods or wildfires being problematic. The homeowner wins, the insurer wins, the municipality wins. Everybody wins by not having. But for example, if let's say you're putting a metal roof on a house to make it such that when embers land on the roof, the roof doesn't ignite and burn the house down. It's about $30,000 for an average home to put a metal roof on it. However, the cost of building wrong, you still have to have a roof that would be vulnerable to fire, a conventional roof would be, say, $15,000. So the delta between the two, I'm not saying that's irrelevant, but it's not that great when you consider that, by the way, the thing I'm investing in is my biggest investment in life and probably my retirement fund. So if you had a house that's worth, let's just say $500,000, spending an extra $10,000 to make sure that, or it's not to make sure, to help ensure that it's not going to burn down, is a pretty good deal in my sense.
But still, it's a heavy burden for those people who have already experienced fire, who have to pay to reconstruct it because they won't have money from the government. So are you both saying that, as we do for other situations, there should be some grants specifically to rebuild with some of those metal structure?
From my perspective, the short answer is yes, for sure. And and by the way, the return on investment for adaptation, and there's lots and lots of studies that have verified this independently, is $1 invested in adaptation produces $2 to $10 in avoided losses per decade, which is a pretty good return. Like Warren Buffett would be excited about that. So so yes, is it a challenge for homeowners to put a little bit of extra cash into protecting their property? The answer is yes. Is it challenging? But they also have to think of it as an investment in equity, because at some point you may go to sell that house, and now you actually use the features that have been put in place to protect the home from flooding or from wildfire or flooding. It becomes a desirable feature into the valuation of the actual property. And one of the things we have to get Canadians to understand that when they're buying a home is that they should be thinking just as much about vulnerability to wildfire if they're in forested regions or flooding. They should be looking at protective measures the house may have relative to those perils with the same degree of excitement that they look for granite countertops. And but as a general rule of thumb, at least at the level of large cities in Canada, Halifax, Montreal, Toronto, Winnipeg, Calgary, Edmonton, and Vancouver, almost all of them have subsidy programs, but now I'm getting on to flooding. Almost all of them have subsidy programs for downspout disconnect, that is approved, for sub pump installation and backwater valve installation. In the City of Toronto, for those three, it's a subsidy of up to about $3,400. We're not there on wildfire. It's just not as advanced as the flood file. And generally speaking, the cities where wildfire is occurring, they tend to be smaller communities without the resources of the big cities. So I'm not sure how quickly we're going to get subsidies in place to help them. You know, it's going to be a push that would have to come from a program from the federal government. And even now, I looked at the federal government. If you look at the two major programs now on building infrastructure, building Canada going forward, building more homes, and the I forget the other one that Don Farrell is running in terms of industry builds. If you read all of the material associated with those two initiatives, adaptation isn't in there anywhere. It's befuddling to me how that could possibly.
And then if I go back to a conversation, and this is kind of just putting it maybe a little bit on the record, but in a conversation before your testimony started, you were talking to me how you're not chasing down more scientists anymore. You don't need more data. You need better conversational tools and behavior tools to talk to people. Your research often emphasizes proactive adaptation rather than reactive recovery. What specific measures, and I'm sort of asking for you to just repeat like how you personally are sort of navigate through this, but what specific measures could Canadian communities prioritize to reduce wildfire risks before they start, and how are you communicating that to people?
Well, they can. So you've seen the material that's on this sheet. This is at the level of the home, and then we have similar direction for the community. But you know, we're advocating for controlled burns, multiple egress routes out of communities, building more fire breaks around communities, ensuring that we have adequate water pressure. That when fire hits, right now it turns out that the water that comes out of the fire hydrants, once you start to light up the whole street because you need it because it's all burning, the pressure drops to almost nothing and you've got no water. So we have to have additional pump capacity to keep the pressure in the system when these events occur, because they were designed for one house to burn, not multiple. And I forget, what was the second part?
You had been telling me how you're talking more with behavioral scientists.
Yeah, so on the climate file in Canada, it's sort of good news, bad news story. The good news is, to a large extent, we know what the problems are. And to a large extent, we know what the solutions are. The problem is we're not mobilizing known solutions nearly quickly enough. So I don't need more climate scientists. I don't need more financial people telling me the costs. I know I can stack this stuff up. I'm spending more time now with behavioral psychologists and behavioral economists looking at how do you motivate the behavior of Canadians to help themselves. And by the way, as was mentioned in reference to the building codes, that's a good thing to do. You want to bring the building codes up to date so you're better prepared for that which is to come. But boy, oh boy, the building codes, I mean, they change at a glacial pace, but that's actually pretty quick now. So the next revisitation, the next visitation of the building codes in Canada is 2030, and there's barely going to be mention of adaptation.
I believe that you said that 1 in 10, I think this was you, 1 in 10 people can't get flood insurance. Was that you who said that today?
10% of the residential housing market, yeah.
Okay.
1.5 million homes.
And what is the possibility, and what is it like? Is it a near-term possibility that there'll be communities that can't get, because it kind of struck me that if you can't get fire insurance, you can't get a mortgage. But will this also become, if you can't get flood insurance, you can't get a mortgage?
No, without flood insurance, so there's three types of insurance relative to water for a home. There's the conventional package when you buy insurance for your home, that if the pipe on the dishwasher breaks or whatever, you get coverage for that. That's standard. But it's an additional rider you have to select for and pay for if you want water for insurance coverage for sewer backup. When the sewer's overwhelmed during the big storms, the water can back up through that system, up through the little drain in the basement and flood your basement, and that's creatively called sewer backup flooding. You have to pay for that. Or as of 2015, 2 years after the floods in Calgary, We now have overland flood insurance in Canada, which Canada was the only country up to that point in the G7 that didn't have overland flood insurance. Overland flood insurance is when you have a big storm or a river overflows, and if water came through the side window of your house and into the basement, that's called overland flooding. So you have to select for that as well. If you had sewer backup flood coverage, but the cause of the flooding was overland, you wouldn't be covered. So you need all three. And by the way, the vast, vast majority of people, Canadians in Canada, have no idea what they're covered for on flood risk. They look into it when they've got 3.5 feet.